Okay, I'm going to be presenting my PowerPoint on some information from Dorothy McElhaney Middle School that is in Murrieta, California. My daughter actually goes to this school, so it was kind of interesting doing the research at a school that my daughter attends. We're going to be looking a little bit closer at the socioeconomically disadvantaged students. This is for CED 603, Multicultural Counseling with Professor Nicholas Vega. Hopefully you can see this information, but the soonest demographical information that was provided online was from 2018-2019, so obviously COVID did not allow for demographical information since then. So let's look a little bit closer. Grades 6th, 7th, and 8th, their total enrollment from 2018-2019, the information was 1,454 students, which is a pretty big middle school. Specifically, we are looking at the socioeconomically disadvantaged, which is at 29.8%. So a pretty significant percentage. Let's look at ELA scores from 2018-2019. Obviously, this was taken, this information is from the CASP assessment results in English, in language arts. So for all students, the percentage met or exceeded was 68.74%. And there was a total of 99.25% tested. So a couple students had opted out. So we're at 68.74 had met or exceeded the standards. So we're going to go down to the socioeconomically disadvantaged and look a little bit closer. 99.11% of students took the test, and only 58.24 met or exceeded the standards. I want to look a little bit closer to some of the other demographical information. So of the female students, 76.7 students met or exceeded. For male, 60.14 met or exceeded. Let's see, Filipino, 84.15 met or exceeded. Hispanic or Latino, 63.08. White, 72.86 met or exceeded. In math, the math scores from the CASP assessment results indicate that 99.04% of the student population tested and 56.44 met or exceeded. From what I researched, most schools did have a dip in, or they did score a little bit lower. Most schools, middle schools, math scores tend to be a little bit lower than the ELA scores. Let's look a little bit closer. 55.54 for male met or exceeded, and 57.28 in female met or exceeded. Black or African American population, 36.46 met or exceeded. Let's do Filipino. It was at 75.61. Hispanic or Latino, 47.87. And white, 65.32. So again, let's look closely at the socioeconomically disadvantaged students. In ELA, 58.24 students categorized as socioeconomically disadvantaged met or exceeded the CASP exam. And in math, 44.70 students categorized as socioeconomically disadvantaged met or exceeded the CASP exam. Clearly, these percentages are lower than most other student groups. I had just gone through some of the other student groups, And this percentage is, I would say, significantly lower than the average. So obviously this is a group that needs a little extra support. So what does this mean? Research indicates that children from low socioeconomic status households and communities develop academic skills slower than children from higher socioeconomic status groups. School systems in low socioeconomic status group communities are often under-resourced, negatively affecting students' academic progress and outcomes. We need to improve school systems and early intervention programs so that they may help to reduce some of these risk factors. What can we do? Here are 6 ways that we can help provide better services for this specific targeted group. We can make sure students are signed up to receive free meals and encourage them to eat breakfast and lunch every day. I think we know that on an empty belly, it's really hard to focus. So it's really important to make sure that these students are receiving their free meals if possible. Counseling, offer counseling. If funding is available, look into external counselors. Sometimes there's extra resources for kiddos. I would say the more counseling services, the better for these particular students. Set up mentoring for students and teachers. Students can learn from their peers how to handle difficult situations and make the most of their schooling. Encourage students to get enough sleep. Disadvantaged students may have more complicated sleeping or home arrangements. Students who are tired find it harder to study. I read an article about how there's sometimes several generations of families living together, and a lot of the students are sleeping, on the couch, sharing beds with multiple siblings. So I know that getting enough sleep, personally, when I don't get enough sleep, it definitely affects my day the next day. And obviously that's something to consider if we're noticing students are just really tired. It could be the home arrangement. Identify students who would benefit from more help, either in groups, perhaps in breakfast or homework clubs, or break time sessions with snacks as added incentives, or even one-on-one sessions. I'm going to go a little bit more into that in the next couple of slides because I really liked that idea. And lastly, provide career talks and opportunities to meet positive role models and develop alumni networks. That's another, I'm going to get into that in the next couple of slides. So let's put these examples into action, specifically positive role models. Bringing positive role models or former students on campus. So I did some research and I found this really great organization that brings in alumni from into the schools that they had formerly graduated from. And there were some really positive statistics that I read. And some of what I learned was that research shows that nearly half of the people from the poorest backgrounds don't know anyone in a job that they would like to do. So, for example, me personally, I grew up in a home where my mom was an educator in several different capacities, all my life. So I always had this role model that was working in education, and she advanced her career by going back to school as an adult and became an administrator. And I knew from early on that I personally wanted to work in education. Not necessarily as a teacher, but because I had that role model, I was able to, identify that was a job that I would like to do. So it's saying that half the people from the poorest backgrounds don't know anyone that have a job that they would like to do. I thought that was pretty significant. And then the result is that only 1 in 8 children from low income backgrounds is likely to become a high earner as an adult. So that's, I thought that was a pretty significant statistic there. So what they do, they bring in former students, and these students they're adults now, and they speak of their successes. And it's just such a great way to motivate these kids to strive for success, because often students respond better to peers who understand their situations because they've been in their shoes. So the stories are inspiring. And actually it reminds me of Professor Vega's story about how he failed his freshman year, and then just kind of something clicked and he decided to, get straight A's the next 3 years through high school, and it really changed his course. So I really love that idea of bringing in role models or former students onto campus and really utilizing them as success stories for these students. And then I just really love this quote. It says, "You can't be what you can't see." Obviously, this resonates with these socioeconomically disadvantaged students. If they don't know what's out there, they can't see past like today. So we need to give them these opportunities, and I really think it's a population that we really, as counselors, need to focus on. That's it.